I'll help you. 3.5 meters. He's sitting right here. And if I want to know what the current trend is in Kazakhstan, it is 3.7 meters because she sits right there. And if you wanted to find somebody who can tell you about Outer Mongolia or can tell you about Tanzania, then I guarantee you we have someone on campus fewer than 200 meters away who will be able to help you. And if that doesn't work, there is a consular section, probably in Auckland or in Wellington, of pretty much every country or an embassy, where they have people that wait all day for you to call and say, tell me about your market, I'm interested. It is today unacceptable that you allow someone to say, it's too hard for me to understand global markets, because you don't have to understand the market. You have to find someone who understands the market. And that in New Zealand is incredibly easy. When you go to have foot surgery done, you are not going to train up your wife to do your foot surgery, right? You're going to go to an expert, a doctor. And that's exactly the same that we do when we go to overseas markets. We go to agents, distributors, trade agencies. There are 1 million people that want to bring new products into their country because they believe that those products can be sold. So this is a critical point where you have to make sure that companies understand you can be small, you can be mid-sized, you can be in the most remotest country in the world, in New Zealand, where you don't bother because life is too good, and you can be successful in Zanzibar because you can find someone who knows Zanzibar. Where is Zanzibar? Who knows? Okay, good. Well, we'll come to that in a minute. Think Africa, somewhere in Africa. The reason why we are now successful with global products, regardless where they come from, and regardless whether they are from a big firm in a big country or a small firm, a small honey firm in a small country like New Zealand, is that the markets in the world have decided they do not want to be forced to supply at local cost and at local quality. Consumers now want global prices and global quality. And every one of you, before you go to a store, Harvey Norman or some technology shop in New Zealand, and you buy a $600 smartphone, all of you go on the web first to find out what are the features that are currently available, what are the colors, what are the speeds, what are the prices. And if you can get this thing for $140 cheaper, shipped in from Hong Kong, taken 2 days, you'll probably buy it in Hong Kong. By the way, how far do I have to jump to find somebody who speaks fluent Cantonese? He's looking in the right direction. He's sitting right there. So language not an issue, market's not an issue, country's not an issue. Life is pretty easy if you jump over your own self-made hurdles and try to get the job done. So what we're looking here at is a definition of why global trade works. If you have a relative advantage, an advantage in relation to a local product, then your foreign product will sell. It will sell more if you have greater advantages. The price is much lower, the features are much more, it does wonderful new things. Or the brand, the Apple brand is appealing. If you have very few relevant advantages, it may not be as advantageous. So here's an example. We have two countries, Monozole and Barnovia. Before we continue on, I'll give you a chance to tell me this time correctly, I hope, where Barnovia is located. I give you 3 choices. Is Barnovia either in South America, Middle Eastern Europe, or Asia? Okay, hands up for Barnovia is in South America. No one. Hands up for Barnovia is in Southern Middle Eastern Europe. All right, about half the hands up, and hands up for Barnovia is in Asia. All right, Barnovia doesn't exist, but it's a good try. So you probably are as good as President Trump. So he is about to go to South America, Latin America next week or week after. So Latin America is a big market, and he's already starting to learn Latin because he wants to fit in. Okay, will not do that joke again. All right. Latin is a language that is the old Rome, Italy language. Latin America is called Latin America because they have a lot of South American influence there. It has nothing to do with the language, so if anybody ever tells you, then that is not right. We have two countries here, Monosol and Barnovia. And with the same amount of work, Monosol makes 6 calculators and 20 cigars. And Barnovia, with the same amount of work, can only do 2 calculators and 10 cigars. So which is a more efficient, better producing country, Monosol or Barnovia? Monosol. Monosol, thank you. So you couldn't really trade, right? Because Monosol is better at both products. That means that Barnovia is worse and more expensive probably at both products, so they couldn't trade. But we know that trade is good because trade makes money flow. If you only trade the money inside your country all the time and you never get fresh money in from the outside, at some point after taxes all the money's gone. So we need to constantly get new money in. We need imports or exports? Exports. Exports, good thinking, just saved yourself. So what we now have is a question. Is Monosol equally better than Barnovia at both products? Or is it differently better at both products? Okay, which is the product that it is much, much better at? Cigars. Who said cigars? You win the cigar. Why?
Because the cost for producing cigar in Monosol is less than Barnovia.
All right, so for cigars, it does 3 times as good, and for the for the calculators, it's 3 times as good. No, you were wrong. It wasn't cigars, it was calculators. You got me tricked because you looked so authoritative. You were too assertive. So you totally bowled me over. So it's the calculators where Monosol is 3 times as good as Barnovia, and it's only 2 times as good at the cigars. So if you wanted to set up a trade between the countries, what would you do? How would you set it up so that Monosol makes something that Barnovia buys and Barnovia makes something that Monosol buys? Monosol is better at? Good. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to tell Monosol, stop making cigars. Only focus on what you do best. That means that you have the most efficient use of materials. You have the most efficient use of intelligence, of knowledge. You know the most about calculators. Stop making those bloody cigars. Only make calculators. Barnovia, which would have no chance to ever sell calculators since it's so much worse than Monosol, would now make cigars, and we now have one country that does something that is relatively better at, and the other country does what it's relatively not so bad at, and now both countries can trade. We have a full, most efficient outcome in calculators in one country and in cigars in the other. The example here is to show that even countries that are bad at many things can probably do something that they're really good at. Ma'am, are you married? Yes. Oh, that's a bad answer. Are you married? No, that's a great answer. So I will tell you that in the area of New Zealand, the South Pacific, the best wedding ceremonies are in Fiji. Imagine a beach in Fiji. Drumbeat. It is getting dark. Smoke. And 4 big Fijians come out of the ocean with a platform, and on top of the platform is the bride. And the drums go more, and they're starting to dance, and everybody is completely mesmerized. It is a wedding that you cannot do on Queen Street in Auckland. It is absolutely impacting. You can only do that in Fiji. Not even where I live in Mount Maunganui could you do that because we don't have 4 big Fijians on the platform. So the idea is that even a country that is an even smaller island, that is even more remote, has some things that it can do a bit better and differently, and therefore it can work towards an export. We have 3 different kinds of countries. Independent countries, interdependent countries, and dependent countries. So, ma'am, all right, if you go out with your friends and you talk about China, you're from China, right?
Yeah.
You're happy, aren't you, with China? Good. So when you talk to your other friend who's also from China, you're both happy about China, two happy people. And you talk about that China is either dependent or independent. What would make you happier? Independent or dependent? Independent. Sounds great, right? Independent. Oh, I am on my own. I am strong. I don't need anybody. I give you a couple of independent countries. North Korea. Very independent because nobody cares. They have no trade. They earn no money. And if they blew themselves up by mistake tomorrow, nobody would even notice. Oh, that was once North Korea. Big deal. Cuba. Angola. Liberia. Iceland. 350,000 people on a rock south of Greenland in the middle of the North Sea. Nobody cares. You are independent when you have few or no relationships, when nobody cares about you, when you don't have to care about anybody else because you're insignificant. Germany, China, the US are dependent countries. New Zealand is dependent on China and on Australia. Australia is dependent on some Asian countries and the EU and the UK. India tries to be independent, is probably interdependent because it has strong trade ties back to the UK, but it otherwise has neighboring trade ties. So when you are a dependent country, you matter because you are connected. You have to think what other countries do. Your reaction to what those countries do is measured because you have to do it in concert. You have to look out for other countries because if you have strong trade partners, you are in a partnership. And in a partnership, you don't get to do what you want to do, you get to do what both want to do. That's why over the last 3 years, the American trade policy is so problematic because America essentially says, I don't give a shit what you do. I'll do what I want to do. And that has never worked before, and all intentions are so far, all signs are it isn't working now either. So when we look at countries, we have independent countries, and those are countries that, for those who don't know better, sound good. But they really are economically compromised. They earn little money. They have no friends. They're usually in a part of the world where nobody cares if you live or die, where the healthcare is bad, where the food is not easily available, where you can't go to many universities, and where life is generally not very good. North Korea has absolutely no problem of illegal immigration. No one ever climbs a wall to immigrate to North Korea. In Cuba, it's a one-way ticket out of Cuba, but nobody ever wants to be in Cuba. So when you have an independent country, quality of life is a problem, not very economically strong, not very appealing. Interdependent countries are those usually in a small block, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, and Kenya together, local connected countries that do something with each other, not big enough to matter on the world stage. And then we have the country that you want to be. And most people just don't get it because it sounds so bad. Being dependent. It means you matter, you have partners, you are important, and you can't just do things like putting up tariffs or saying you no longer want to import or export, because that has an immediate effect not just on the other country, but also on you. So when we look at who do we trade with and what kind of countries do we ultimately want to have as partners, we have to have a list. So, ma'am in the back there with the glasses, what would be a good country that you would like to trade with? What would you look for in a country if you wanted to export stuff from New Zealand to that country?
I think it should be have the good products.
Okay, you saved her. She was already ready. So, but I'll let you go on. You have a good product, a product that would sell. Now, what would you want? No? Yes? I must be cross-eyed. What do you look for in a country?
Population.
What kind of population? Lots of tiny people?
Large population.
Large population of people with money, discretionary income. That's why India is so attractive. That's why China is so attractive. You add people, tens of millions every year, who now are middle class. And middle class does not mean 1.35 to 1.48 meters. Middle class means that you have more money than you need to live. And when you have more money than you need to live, you can buy a first car. You can get a 4G smartphone. You can send your children to New Zealand for education. You can now do something with that money. That's the countries we want. So global trade is a mindset, making sure that people don't think it's too complicated. It is a resource issue, making sure you have what it takes to be successful. And it is a strategic issue, picking the correct countries in which you would like to do business. Some countries are big, but everybody's there, all the competition. Some countries are smaller, and maybe you could be one of the first ones. We had years ago an Irish guy, and he was an Irish guy, lots of beer, very clever accent, a little bit of a 1,000-liter beer belly, and he ran a cell phone company, and he said, I'm going to be the first cell phone company in Haiti, which is a Caribbean island that was ravaged by a hurricane, has political issues, and it probably would be about the last place on earth you would want to do a holiday in the Caribbean. And he said, I'm going to go there. And they said, why? And he said, because nobody else is there. And those people also want to have phone service, and they want 4G. And so he now is the biggest phone company in Haiti. He makes really good money. It was quite hard to get started, as you would imagine, but he found some good people to help him with. And he now has a cell phone company that pretty much has an 80% market share in Haiti, and he makes good money. So it is not always going to Paris because it's so nice. It is sometimes going to Bulgaria because it is not so nice, but it will be nicer in the future and therefore has opportunities. I will see one half of you in the tutorial now. The other half I will see at the tutorial at 1 o'clock. It's the same tutorial, don't come to both. So I will see you over at the Atrium building in a couple of minutes.